Okay, so Denis Villeneuve's Dune saga. I mean, it's a cinematic masterpiece, right? It's this breathtaking epic that has totally captivated audiences everywhere. But what if the hero we're all cheering for, Paul Atreides, is actually the exact person the original author, Frank Herbert, was warning us about? That's what we're digging into today. This really interesting tension between the movies we love and the cautionary tale that was actually at the heart of the novel.
And this quote from Frank Herbert himself, it's basically the key that unlocks the whole puzzle. It just perfectly frames the entire conflict we're talking about. It suggests that, being a hero is really just a matter of perspective and where you decide to stop the story. So what if the movies are telling the opposite story that the author intended? I mean, don't get me wrong, the films are absolutely brilliant. But by splitting that first book and really zooming in on Paul Atreides' rise to power, they might be accidentally turning Herbert's super deep warning about charismatic leaders into the exact thing he was trying to critique, a good old-fashioned hero's journey.
So let's talk about that. An epic hero's journey? I mean, that's really how the film presents Paul Atreides as this classic chosen one. When you watch it on screen, Dune is everything you could possibly want from a modern epic. It's huge, it's serious, and it tells a story that feels totally mythic, but also kind of familiar.
And boy, did the world respond. The first film was just a massive success, both critically and at the box office. We're talking 6 Academy Awards. Audiences completely embraced it for what it seemed to be, the story of this young, noble kid, burdened by destiny, who rises up and comes into his power against these impossible odds.
And this whole narrative, it's just pure Hollywood formula. You've got a talented boy who loses everything, finds out he's special, and then rises up to lead a rebellion. I mean, we've seen this exact pattern in everything from Star Wars to Harry Potter, right? It's a super powerful and, let's be real, a very marketable formula.
But here's the big twist. Frank Herbert wasn't trying to write a blockbuster hero's journey. Not at all. He was very carefully, very meticulously, crafting a warning against the very idea of a messiah.
See, Herbert was really suspicious of charismatic leaders. He saw how easily people just give up their own ability to think critically when a single powerful figure comes along. He really believed this was one of the most dangerous and most repeated patterns in all of human history.
So, what this all boils down to is that the entire point of the book was to show how a messiah figure is created, is manufactured. It was a warning that these charismatic political religious leaders are a terrifying threat, not some kind of salvation. Herbert wants you to be scared of Paul's power, not be in awe of it.
So, let's deconstruct Paul the Messiah. How exactly did the film shift things to make Paul so singularly powerful? Well, this huge thematic change happens through a whole series of really small but super significant changes from the book to the screen. And they completely alter Paul's character.
You can actually see a really deliberate pattern here. For instance, the spice rescue. In the film, Paul is the one coordinating it. In the book, that's all his father, Duke Leto. Or the escape from the Harkonnens. The movie has Paul using the voice to save them, but in the book, it's his mother Jessica who gets them out. Even the duel with Jameis. The film makes it seem like Paul's visions save him, but in the book, it's a crucial warning from Chani that saves his life. Key moments of competence and agency are just lifted from other characters and handed straight to Paul, making him seem way more exceptional. And what this does is it totally transforms Paul's true nature. The Paul in the book, he's a cynic. He's a politically savvy operator who is fully aware that he's manipulating a prophecy for political power, even as he's terrified of where it's all going. But the Paul in the film, he's a much more reluctant hero, burdened by this destiny, who by the end really seems to believe in his own myth. He becomes way more sympathetic. And, these changes go way beyond just Paul's character. They ripple outwards, kind of whitewashing the entire galaxy and reshaping the cultural and political fabric of the whole Dune universe.
What the film does is it deliberately swaps out the novel's really deep Islamic and Middle Eastern influences for language and imagery that feels more Western, more Christian-coded. So Paul's holy war is called a crusade instead of a jihad, and the Emperor's elite troops, the Sardaukar, they lose their clear inspiration from Ottoman Janissaries and get more of a generic European vibe. The specific Mina traditions are just toned down.
And this even happens with the character of Light Kynes. Now in the book, Kynes is a white, male imperial ecologist, and his death is this big critique of Western hubris, this idea that science can just control everything. The film changes the character to a black woman allied with the Fremen. And while that was likely done to increase diversity, it kind of has the unintended effect of simplifying that really complex critique of colonialism that was in the book. So, why?
Why make all these changes? Why create this anti-Marvel blockbuster? Well, the answer really lies in the craft of making a modern epic and the philosophy behind what it takes to make a successful one today.
From the very beginning, Villeneuve's vision was for a grounded, tactile epic. He wanted to emphasize brutalist architecture and this real, physical weight. It was a conscious choice to move away from typical, slick sci-fi aesthetics. He literally wanted to make an anti-Marvel blockbuster.
And the dedication to this craft is just incredible. To shoot the Harkonnen homeworld, Giedi Prime, they used infrared cameras to create this completely colorless, anti-nature world. Hans Zimmer's score, he went out and isolated himself in the desert and created brand new instruments just to avoid traditional orchestral sounds. They built massive 12-ton ornithopters and physically lifted them with cranes in the Jordanian desert. Even the way the characters walk on the sand was choreographed by the guy who did Black Swan. All this effort creates a world that feels so real, so visceral, that you just get swept up in it.
So that brings up a really good question. Does creating a successful blockbuster actually require simplifying a novel's most challenging ideas? Because in the end, it seems like the filmmakers prioritized a visceral, emotional journey over everything else, and that meant streamlining Herbert's really dense political and philosophical arguments for a modern, global audience.
But remember what Herbert said, it all depends on where you stop the story. And this story isn't over. Part 1 introduced the hero. Part 2 showed the hero rising to power. But the next film, planned for 2026, is set to adapt Dune Messiah. That's the book where the hero becomes the anti-hero, where Herbert's warning finally fully comes to pass.
And listen to this, Timothée Chalamet himself, who confirmed Part 3 will be his last, has called the next chapter the eeriest one and a big swing. That really suggests that the movies are finally ready to confront the horrifying consequences of Paul's rise to power, the entire point of Herbert's original work.
So that leaves us with a final question. The film makes us believe in a hero. The book asks us to fear him. Which of those stories do you think is more important today?